I'm Coffee Kevin, and I just wanted to take a moment today. I am really enjoying this coffee. Actually, if you can get a shot of the bag, Pat. All right. Mm. This is a coffee that was sent to me by Klatch. It is a Klatch coffee, and it is a what is it? Guatemala Antigua, right? Yeah, it is. And oh wow, this is this is the stuff. I think all Guatemalas now, they used to have a smokiness to them, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that that is due to the roasting process at the time. But I'm not sure either, because there was a claim that it was. I know there was a long held claim that it was due to the how it was processed in the growing country, and something to do with Guatemala. But I haven't had it in a long time. But this coffee is just a beautiful Guatemala. If you have a chance, be sure to check this out. Delicious. Uh, I'm going to read a story from a Coffee Companion issue. The next story, we had read the opening story, which was Roasters, the Real Rock Stars, or something like that. And That was, I enjoyed reading that, and personally, I got a lot out of it. I hope you did too. But today I have an interview, one of the first interviews I did, and it was with John Martinez. Now, John, let me give you a little background on this. John is or the late John Martinez, because he passed away a few years ago. John Martinez was a specialty coffee roaster, and John was born, I believe, in Jamaica, and he came here, and he was one of the at least first ones I met, specialty coffee roasters. And I was introduced to him by Bill McAlpin of La Manita Coffee. And I'm trying to think of the order in which I met all these various people. But, I mentioned last time that I met Dan Ephraim of, at the time, was a Richheimer Coffee in Chicago. Well, somehow he introduced me to someone else. It's the type of thing where if you just start calling around, and I'm used to doing this as a researcher from being a writer. It's a big part of being a writer, actually, is researching and being able to reach out and get in many ways, it's detective work. And you go and you call someone, and then you try to get leads, and the goal is, I don't know if you know this about sales, but the goal in sales is, if you don't get a sale from somebody, you try to get 3 leads from them. Well, the goal in, frankly, this type of, in the research phase of writing, is to get 3 leads. And somehow I got Bill McAlpin, who was a grower. He grew La Manita Costa Rican coffee. And one of the leads I got from I believe Bill, was John Martinez, and John is a very fine roaster. And I know that issue 1 of the Coffee Companion newsletter that I came out with shortly afterwards was an interview with John Martinez. And a story about him. And actually, the way I did my article, I basically did an article in which I included interview bites. Now, later interviews, I just simply were less that way, and more. I had a short intro specifically about the individual that I was interviewing, and then I went right to the interview. Just question answer. But in this one, it's more written as prose. And I will read it right now while I'm sipping on, what a spoiled person I am, while I'm sipping on this beautiful Guatemalan coffee from Klatch. And by the way, I do want to point out, John Martinez company is still represented. It's still, John's widow has survived, but also John's son, John Jr., survives and runs the a company today, still out of Atlanta, and they are and still to this day a very fine roaster. Here we go. John Martinez. John Martinez has all the necessary components of a great coffee creator. Born of third-generation tobacco farmers in Jamaica, he not only allows but encourages customers to smoke if they wish. Yet he does not roast or even store flavored coffee beans near his precious estate varieties. I have nothing against flavored coffee, he says, with more than a trace of wary emphasis on the word flavored. But it is just that flavored coffee takes over when it is stored near the others. Many in the business agree, but few have publicly said so. And I must protect the subtleties my customers pay for, Martinez said, again, not exaggerating. J. Martinez and Company sell only estate coffees. These coffees are claimed to be and exhibit an even greater consistency due to their being culled from a single farm rather than purchased from multi-farm collectives. In this way, John may be more like a wine dealer. Not to say other roasters do not offer single farm varieties, but even his competitors agree John Martinez's artistry is a benchmark. J. Martinez also features some of the best, most gaudy neo-Victorian artwork and packaging. Like a perfectly wrapped Christmas package, one does not want to break the seal for fear of ruining it. One must overcome any pangs of guilt, however, because the product inside does in fact meet the expectations of the artwork outside. Martinez coffees have an old-world richness and heavy, almost smoky flavor profile. It is not surprising that this company is in Atlanta, with its Deep South ambience. 2 J. Martinez varieties are promoted as specialties, although Martinez, who has a reputation for one of the best noses in the business when it comes to cupping, a compliment, can clearly find classics wherever he goes. The first is his Mocha Java blend. Martinez somehow has managed to find real mocha from Yemen. Most purveyors must rely on Ethiopian mocha, which, while a worthy substitute, cannot match the Yemen for body and wininess. Many will claim that real mocha has not lived up to its reputation for many years. A sip of the Martinez blend proves this to be strong. Martinez has not been so lucky with Javas, however, and must substitute the now superior Sumatran variety. The fact that John insists on the original and far costlier Mocha Java formula, that's 2 parts Mocha to 1 part Java, minimizes this currently necessary difference. For reason no doubt of his Jamaican heritage, John also features one of the few available Jamaican Blue Mountains. There is no reason to go on about the qualities of this well-known variety, which, thanks to Japanese competition for its flavor, is seldom available in the U.S. at any price. Suffice it to say, J. Martinez still has access to it and even offers a decaffeinated version. Martinez coffees are given a fairly light roast, and it should be emphasized that they are rich and well-developed, possibly thanks to Martinez's own selection standards. At any rate, Martinez is not the kind of guy who would roast anyway, but the way he believed to be the path of perfection. And that was an article, I wrote that in 1993, or at least I published it in 1993. I would assume I wrote it shortly before I published it. Sorry, I can't help it. A little background on this article, because in some ways, obviously now it's very dated, and that in many ways, the idea of the newsletter, I was introducing many people to the concept and kind of a definition of what specialty coffee was. I mean, there were terms that have been thrown around like gourmet coffee or high-end coffee, I suppose, but really, this is even before, let's see, had Starbucks really hit? Well, Starbucks certainly had hit a while, was entrenched in Seattle, but it certainly was not entrenched in the rest of the country yet. And this was really I wanted to introduce people to specialty coffee and the term specialty coffee and an explanation. And John Martinez certainly was one of the early purveyors. Understand, to give you a little context for this, as usual, I don't know if you how much you like history, but I find I'm a real history aficionado, and as well as coffee aficionado. And I would say that history always has these multiple kind of synergistic things that happened at the same time, more or less. And one of them that happened was espresso was brought here. One of them that happened was probably the thing that kicks it off to begin with is the idea that the major coffee roasters, and by that I mean Hills Brothers, Folgers, Maxwell House, etc. Those were so-called supermarket coffees, but they were the mainstream coffees, the ones that would be advertised on national television. Those coffees started to look for their beans elsewhere. And we're going to have an interview coming up pretty soon that also talks about this from the green point of view, from the distribution point of view of the unroasted coffee, and what changed in the industry. And what changed in the industry was they found new places to source their coffees, and suddenly you had countries like Colombia and smaller, Guatemala, Costa Rica, the Indonesians, the fine Indonesians from Sumatra. Those coffees were suddenly not in demand by the mainstream roasters, who previously had to do their blends, in effect, from those coffees. But what they ended up doing is taking and sourcing elsewhere and planting coffee, just really what the Dutch originally did with the original Yemen when they took it to the Sumatra and Java islands, and they planted it there because they actually got a better price on it there, because they more or less owned through colonialism those lands, even though that seems unheard of now, doesn't it? To me at least. But at the time, it seemed like a really smart idea. So what happened here is we had another, in effect, effort to do that, and the large companies pretty much moved on their sourcing operations to growers that they owned, or they had either a part interest in, or they just simply got a better price from, that were created at yet another place. So these really entrenched coffees that had distinct flavors and arguably better growths were widely available, and those were the coffees that someone like John Martinez, decided to source. And now, what was synergistic with that was and we'll have another interview coming up about this aspect of it, is the roasting. And the roasting was actually micro roasted, and suddenly actually J. Martinez, I believe John used, and I have a pretty good memory for stuff like this, I believe at the time John was using, that I met him, I think John may have been using Jabez Burns roasters. Now, don't clock me on that, because that may be incorrect, and I'll correct that in an upcoming episode. Not that it mattered to most of you anyway at this time, but I want to be accurate. But John, in other words, the type of roaster that they had, those became redundant as much larger industrial roasters became de rigueur by companies like, again, Hills Brothers, Folgers, of really huge companies, really began making giant roasting decisions, how they roasted, and it just became more economical for them. It was economies of scale. So they sold off their older roasters, and Jabez Burns was originally a smaller roaster. And I think I mentioned last episode in that I had met Dan Ephraim at a roaster in Chicago who did specialty roasting. Well, I wasn't called specialty roasting at the time, but the roasting for all sorts of people for the House of Miller Mocha Java was the coffee I cited last time. He actually made that he roasted it on an old series of old Jabez Burns roasters, and those do a nice job. But when I referred to a smokiness, I think the smokiness that I tasted in referring to in the article was that smokiness. Also, by the way, I was onto something and didn't know it. Years later, I found a coffee. There's a book in the coffee business that's many in the coffee business have read. In fact, the Specialty Coffee Association even went to the trouble of reprinting it, and of course putting it out and selling it. And it was called Euchre's. And Euchre's is a trade book, but it's got some ancient trade history in it. Well, I guess what? I found an even older book than that, and it is a coffee book, and I'll have to bring it on the air. I actually own it. Is it there, Pat? Yeah, I see it right. I believe. Well, anyway, if you can find it, no, it's there. It is. That's it. That's what I thought it was. Okay, I'll show it to you on camera. Coffee from Plantation to Cup by F.B. Thurber. I don't know of any relation to the James Thurber. Is that coming up? Oh, there we are. Okay, well, I don't mind sharing the shot with this book, Coffee from Plantation to Cup. And look at that. This is a great book and very rare. And I even I shared it with a very good friend of mine, Ken Davids, and he and I both naturally were just so excited. This was like finding. I mean, this is for us absolute treasure. But it has a lot of interesting information. Among them, one of the most interesting facts in it is that Thurber identifies that the finest Javas are Sumatras. So it really reveals that, for all intents and purposes, Sumatran coffee was known as Java, and of course they were the finest Javas. If you wanted to get a really good Mocha Java blend, you counted on the Java coffee called Sumatras. Well, we don't even consider it specifically a Java coffee. Those are two distinct regions now. So when and I can give you a couple of roasters. John Martinez was one who substituted very wisely, and probably without this knowledge, but very wisely, without the historic knowledge, but just by his taste buds, put those two coffees together, the Mocha, Yemen Mocha, and the Sumatra. Another person who I believe did that, I would have to double check with him, would be George Howell. George used as a third ingredient, he would round it out with Colombian coffee, but he used, I know he used Yemen, I believe he used Sumatran coffee for his Java. We'd have to double check with him. But there were no doubt others as well. Obviously, by the way, many Mocha Java labeled coffees of the time period had none of the above in there. It was just the name. But and I can name a few of those. By the way, I think including the one I originally touted, the one from Richheimer, did actually have I believe had some of the original beans in there, but they also used whatever they had, and made a great coffee. I believe they did use Ethiopian, by the way, not Yemen at all. But still a wonderful coffee. Doesn't mean it can't be a great blend, because it's not the one that it's purported to be. But anyway, this book is very interesting. And then, but back to J. Martinez. John, when he passed away, his son took over. John was just a very, very respected person in the coffee business. And I have also many happy memories. This is quite personal, but let me point out that I had a video gig which included visiting Atlanta frequently on a semi-regular basis. And I was a very popular producer because the crew would always want to sign on with me, because I would always take them to a roaster that I knew, and they'd all get coffee. First of all, they get some beans, but they would also I'd take them there for coffee, and they get to meet all these various luminaries in the coffee business, such as J. Martinez, Orrin Bluestein, the list goes on, and we'll be visiting and meeting with these people, even if it's through the writings such as this one. But John was a very fine man, and he had the most marvelous voice. Marvelous voice. He had this cultured, I guess I would call it a Jamaican accent from his childhood, dating obviously, but his origin. But he had a very deep voice, too resonant. And he, the coffee tasted as great as it tasted, and it tasted great, fine, without any help from John after he was done roasting it. But I have to say, the coffee tasted extra special in his presence, as did cupping, and it was just always a pleasure. I've many, many happy memories of him. All right, well, that is today's little reading, and I'm sure I've taken a long time to improvise and tell you about this, but I just wanted to also bring up, we are working with planning out, I'm still counting on October in Chicago for a Coffee Con, October 10th and 11th. And if, assuming those dates are not, we don't put them off for any reason or have to, I'm counting on that in the Chicago area. It should be a good Midwest show. I hope you can make it to that, and we'll be selling tickets pretty soon. I will announce it here right when tickets are available. I just want to make it real simple for everyone and give everyone a chance. Meanwhile, it's a real pleasure coming and visiting with you, and I just wish you well. I understand we're all looking forward to an end to the, I suppose, this quarantine in effect. But, it's, on the other hand, it's great to take walks, great to meet people. Certainly the challenge is, of course, working if you're affected by that, and I know many are. My heart's out to you and my prayers. But we'll see you again soon, and looking forward to it. I really enjoy visiting with you, and I wish you the best. I hope every one of you has a cup of coffee like this in your near future. I'm